everybody, how's it going? So we are about a week away from breaking ground. Super excited, really big deal. We've been waiting for this for a really long time. And we have some work to do out here at the building site. We have about 15 trees around the property. Most of them are black walnut that have to come out. And the logger is coming in about 4 days. And so what I want to do before the logger comes is first we need to move our fire pit and the firewood. And then I'm going to really stake out properly exactly where the house is going to be. And then I'm going to mark it on the ground, because when the loggers come in and are taking all these trees down, they'll probably knock all the stakes and everything down. So we're going to restake it dead on. Then, hey Uzi, what's going on, buddy? Everybody asks about you all the time, and I try to tell them that you no longer want to hang out in the shop with me. We have 3 young kids, and all he wants to do is just eat the treats that they have all day. So he just follows them around, gains weight, doesn't hang out with dad anymore. But anyway, so yeah, we're gonna get to work. It's super hot outside, and move some of this stuff and get the house staked out. It's gonna be pretty exciting. Let's get started. All right, so I'm going to start by moving the fireplace down to the new location that we picked out for it. And my little buddy Henry, he's coming over to put one last little stick in the fireplace. He's such a good helper. Good job, buddy. All right, so I have my corner stake where I want it, and I have already kind of generally staked this out, but now we're gonna exactly do it for the foundation. Before I kind of had it for the outside dimensions of the timber frame, but the foundation is actually a little bit wider than that. So we're gonna stake this thing out dead on. Have my corner stake. I know that I want my back wall essentially to run almost kissing where this walnut tree is. So I'm gonna hook up my tape. I know my first measurement is 57 feet 2 inches. We're gonna walk it down there and put another stake in. All right, 7 2 inches right there. Man, this ground is really hard. I know this wall needs to be 25.2 inches, 25 feet 2 inches. Oh man, there's 25, there's 2 inches, so pretty close to this right here. And then take the diagonal, 62 feet, 5.5 inches. All right, so 62 feet, 5.5 inches. All right, looking good. Do the opposite thing for that corner. Double check here, we got, should be 57.2, bingo. Check this other side. Come on, 57.2. Oh, that's nice. That is nice and that works out. All right. Once the main rectangular section of the house is laid out and squared, I get the help of my daughter and we lay out the little bump out areas and other angles of the house. Then I attach a string line to my stake so that I can go around with spray paint, follow that string line, and mark the entire perimeter of the house on the ground. Definitely close enough for the excavators, within like an inch. So it's a really big day today. We have a timber buyer, a logger coming out, and he's cutting down all of the black walnuts and a couple other trees that are in the building site where we're gonna be building our house here. Unfortunately, I have to let go of these black walnuts as a fine furniture maker and woodworker. It's heartbreaking to see these black walnuts leave. And I have a sawmill. I could technically cut these all up, and I will hold on to a couple logs, but it's just, you know, you got to pick your battles. It's too much to deal with. I have the house I need to focus on. I can't really get too carried away with trying to saw up a bunch of timber. So I had a timber buyer come out, look at them, gave me a price. It'll save me money on having the excavators remove the trees. So anyway, so that's the game plan for today. And then in a couple days, hopefully we have the excavators are coming out. I have the house all staked out and we're getting moving finally, big time. And I'm sorry to all the people out there that hate seeing trees getting cut down. I understand, but because of our location to the floodplain, this is basically the only place we can build, so the trees had to go. But they're not being turned into firewood. They're going to be turned into veneer and lumber for furniture, so they'll be put to very good use. And while we're on the topic of turning trees into beautiful things, I wanted to let you know that this house that we're going to be building is going to be a timber frame house where you can see the entire frame of the house and the beauty of the wood on the inside. And I'm also holding week-long classes here on my property to teach timber framing while we build this house. Now here's the cool part. I teamed up with Shelter Institute, which is a timber framing school out in Maine, and I got access to their 12-hour online timber framing class and their online SIP panel class, which is an $800 value for the two classes that my students are going to get for free. And a couple veterans reached out hoping to use their GI Bill for the class, but unfortunately I'm not set up for that. And so after some thought, I did decide that I'm going to give a pretty substantial discount to my fellow veterans out there. So if you're interested in that, please send me an email. I have an email listed down in the description, as well as links to the two classes that are still open and also a video that goes into more detail on the classes. So please feel free to check those out and don't hesitate to email me if you have any questions. So this tree that they're working on right now was the one that had me most concerned. It was leaning pretty heavily towards the barn, and I thought that the guy would come out and top the tree, but he just brought over his big old skid steer and pushed it over. He is a relatively young guy. If you're in the mid-Michigan area, it's Lou's Cutting Edge Tree Service. And after talking to him and watching him do this and watching the cuts, and he would talk about some of the cuts to preserve that cold fiber on the hinge. When you traditionally fell a tree, you want to preserve all that wood on these really high valuable walnuts. And the guy was really good at what he did for such a young guy. I was really impressed. And instead of wasting a bunch of time climbing and topping the trees, he was able to just take that skid steer and push them over. Anytime they were leaning one way or the other, he could drop them exactly where he wanted to. And this here is a giant cottonwood tree that I've been worried about since we bought the property. The bottom of it is rotted out and it's extremely big and it's leaning towards the barn. So it's been on my to-do list to hire somebody to come and remove this. And since he was out here working on the walnut trees, he was able to give me a pretty good price on dropping and moving these logs over for me. He used a throw line to attach a 60,000-pound Amsteel rope to the top of the tree that he then ran to the skid steer, which was about 80 yards away in the direction he wanted it to fall. He He did some pretty advanced cutting and notching of the base of the tree while the tree was being pulled by that skid steer, and when he was ready to let it fall, it fell exactly where he wanted it to. It was pretty impressive to watch, and I'm so happy that tree is finally down. Now this giant machine is called a log skidder, and it was one of the coolest machines to watch. It basically seemed like it could go over pretty much anything. It has a bunch of cables that come out of the back that get tied to logs, or in this case, the treetops. And then he dragged them over to a spot on the property that I chose, where I'll probably just leave piled up for the bunnies and woodchucks and birds to make little homes in. So over here is about a 10-foot berm that I wanted him to pile the tops on. And I thought he was just gonna drop the tops at the top of that berm and then push them over with that log skidder. But nope, he just continued and drove right over the top of that berm, pulling the tops with him and then unhooked them. I just thought it was really funny that he didn't care at all. And that log skidder basically, like I said, is unstoppable. And this poor little bunny got scared out of its home. Some of you might be wondering why I'm not doing a lot of this initial work myself, and those are some pretty hard decisions. Taking the trees, for instance, I could have dropped the majority of those, but I wouldn't have been comfortable dropping the trees leaning towards the barn or that giant cottonwood tree. I've just seen too many of those fail videos where people trying to save a few bucks try felling a tree and it falls on their house and it's just a disaster. And since I knew I wanted to sell the walnut, I knew it was going to be best to just find a buyer who also was an experienced arborist, let them fell the trees and take care of all of that, and all the risk is on them. And as far as the foundation goes, we've had several major considerations out here on the property. Most of it's in a floodplain, and we can't build in the floodplain. There's only certain parts of the property that we can build on, and several of the areas above the floodplain have a bunch of rubble that's buried there from 30-40 years ago, so those aren't suitable to build on. We had to hire soil engineers to evaluate a couple different spots, and this is basically the only spot that was safe to build on. A lot of times people who build timber frames are homesteaders or off-the-grid folks, and they like timber framing because it really lends itself well to that lifestyle and that form of building. And those folks often do their own excavation and build their own foundation walls with those foam Lego type building blocks called ICFs. And as much as I would like to do that, with the complications out here, my inexperience with foundations and excavation, and the size and shape of the foundation, I knew it was just going to be best to spend that extra money, because it was pretty expensive, and leave it to the professionals. plus the time it would take me compared to how fast those professionals can work and the deadline of being ready for these classes in August and September, it was just basically a no-brainer to hire most of this initial work.
Erase that part, Chris. You have to delete that part, dropping that over.
I also wanted to give a shout out to Cook Brothers Excavating, who brought in the water and installed the septic for the barn a few years ago, and they're also doing all the excavation work for the house project. They've been great to work with, responsive, honest, and upfront with me. And I know most of the people who watch this aren't in the mid-Michigan area where I live, but during this series I want to make a point to give shout outs and help promote the local contractors and companies that I work with if I think they do a good job. They're not paying me or anything to say that. I just think it's really important to help support local small businesses. So if you're in the mid-Michigan area and need some excavation work done, give Cook Brothers a call. They'll do a good job for you. Once all the stumps are removed and hauled away, they begin excavating the topsoil around the entire footprint of the foundation. Now this is a pretty unique foundation that we're doing because the location at current grade is only about 3 feet above the 100-year floodplain. And the 100-year floodplain means that at that level there's a chance that once every 100 years the river will flood high enough to reach that height. So to avoid the mandatory FEMA flood insurance, your lowest floor, whether it's finished or not, has to be at least 1 foot above that 100-year floodplain level. So I decided the best option would be to build a 4.5 foot tall crawl space and have that crawl space floor be 4 feet above the 100-year floodplain to keep me nice and safe and dry. And I'll still likely buy flood insurance, and since we'll be above that 100-year floodplain, it'll be much more affordable than if you were below it. And on the next video, we're going to be going into more details about the foundation, so if you're interested in following along on this whole house build series, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And I want to say thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.